decided to put together a bunch of clips from the last few months, and it's kind of like a bunch of videos that I filmed that I didn't really think belonged in a training vlog. Not that I do vlogs, I just put together videos and think of a thing that was on my mind during that time. So this past February, I got to watch Grant compete in another strongman contest. This was his second contest, and I wanted to include a couple clips from it. I've actually really become more and more of a strongman fan as time has gone on. The events are just way more interesting to watch than powerlifting. And I did sign up for a strongman competition right before March of 2020. And that contest was supposed to be held in San Luis Obispo. It never got rescheduled, and we never got our money back. So that was my one time that I was bold enough to sign up for a strongman contest, and since it never occurred, I don't know if I'm going to plan for another one quite yet. I love watching it. I just think the training for it is not something that I'm ready for yet. A lot of it is the element of lots of dirt and really hot surfaces that you train on that are not quite the comfort of being inside a gym, whether it be indoors or in the shade. But the World's Strongest Man was just held in Sacramento, and the last couple weeks, the footage and commentary around that has what's been keeping me distracted from the more important / painful elements of my life, which I'm going to talk about in this video. So as of right now, I am just 3 days away from my next meet, which I've been talking about. And about 2 weeks ago, I don't want to say hurt, because I think that sounds, I guess there's different degrees of hurt, but I would say injured. I injured myself in training. It wasn't like a tear. It wasn't like any career-ending spine injury, so I wouldn't say it's that drastic, but I did strain a muscle. We think it was an erector muscle. It was a muscle that runs up and down my back, and it kind of started at the top is where I felt it while squatting, one of my heavier squat sessions, and it did progressively get worse for a few days before it started to get better. But the purpose of my short video is not to talk about my injury. What I want to talk about is some of the mentality around injury that I got to think about more that I usually don't think about while training. Usually when planning training sessions, I have the day, the week, and the month kind of laid out in advance. And I don't tend to have expectations for injury going into it. You never expect that, but sometimes it happens. So reframing my mind around potential injury, I just wanted to make a note of a few things before I completely forget. And this will be a good reference for me in the future should something like this happen again, which I hope not, but training, injuries is kind of a part of training, just like it's not expected, but sometimes it happens. And here we go. So number one, I would say do not let the injury seem bigger in your head. I want to say I was somewhat overdramatic about my injury, not to the public and not to even the people in my life, but rather to myself. In my head, I was describing myself as, oh my God, I am a shattered human being, like just exaggerating almost for fun to try to bring some levity to the situation, because I obviously was not shattered, and there's obviously way worse situations in the world and in life. But just for the sake of lifting, being less than 2 weeks out, I thought my chances of competing for this year were over. And the getting to the contest wasn't my number one priority. Obviously, it was health, but secondary to that, if I could still make it to the contest, even if I could only bench, I would. And so I kept that the goal. I was like, well, you know, if I can't really squat or deadlift, I can at least bench, because I was able to bench with no pain. So that was a little encouraging. The first few days, not gonna lie, were rough. I was having trouble sitting, getting in and out of a car was brutal, and I'm much better now. I'm happy to report I can get in and out of a car with no pain. But the first few days were really rough. Number 2, stay moving. Even if you feel like certain parts are a little bit achy, if you can do certain movements, like daily living movements, activities of daily living, with a 2 to 3 out of 10 level pain, continue to do those movements. Getting blood flow, getting movement is really important. It also lets your body know you're not broken, that there are certain things that might trigger the feeling of a spasm or the feeling of pain, but you have to be able to let your body know it's okay to move in certain other movements. And number 3, seek professional advice. I was lucky to have access to a couple chiropractors. I had 3 different individuals work on me within the first few days following my injury, and with that, I was able to kind of find a diagnosis. I didn't have any imaging done, but based off of their evaluations and based off of how much movement I could do comfortably and then palpating certain regions, I was able to comfortably get to a point where I was like, okay, well, nothing's seriously destroyed. There's definitely a strain, but I was able to come up with a game plan going forward because of that. And number 4, track and measure things to see if symptoms are improving. Use things like, today reaching down to pick something up was a 5 out of 10 pain, but yesterday it was a 7 out of 10 pain. Using things like that will help you gauge whether or not you're getting better. And I also noticed things like if I dropped a shoe on the floor, that shoe was dead to me. Like the first few days, I was like, I am not bending over to pick that back. But as time went on, like a week later, bending over to pick things up, I could do it with no problem, not even thinking about being hurt like I had the week before. And number 5, I think, is what we're on, adjust expectations. So I still lifted following being injured, but I did it really super lightweight considering I have a meet coming up. I just went in, I just did warm-ups, and I warmed up my body parts for a really long time, did warm-up weights for a really long time, and I only did what didn't hurt. So I would get to a level where it's like, oh, this level of doing a movement hurts me, I'm going to back off for today. So I was being super conservative because my goal, again, wasn't just to get to the stage or get to a certain meet or be able to lift a certain weight. It was how much movement could I do without aggravating things, and if I was improving, that was a bonus, or if I could do more than I thought, that was a gift. And I'm reading these out of order now because I wrote these out of order. I think I might be on 6 now. I'll say evaluate what has gone wrong. So towards the end, as I was noticing things were getting better, I started to figure out what led to this. It wasn't a freak accident. It turned out that my technique wasn't as good as it could have been, and now I know there are more areas I can work on during my improvement season to try to avoid this type of injury next time. And number 7, I would say accepting that there is a risk with everything, because just like running could potentially lead to injury, surfing could potentially lead to injury. Heck, skateboarding, which I've avoided for the last few months because I didn't want to accidentally sprain an ankle or something, could lead to an injury. So accept that there is a risk with everything, and just as I'm lifting weights that are 90% or more of my 1 rep max, it makes sense that there's a certain point when I'm pushing the limits that things might get worn, things might break down. I almost said worn out, but things might lead to a small injury like this, but that is part of what I signed up for. And so when something like this happens, make sure not to freak out. So this is mostly a note to my future self. I really hope it helps someone out there, though. And I leave you with a clip of Grant's graduation.
From Redwood City, California, Grant Brown.
Ha ha ha!